It's like the lowest priority out of all the company ones, but
That's what I saw.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the wonderful world of weddings. My name is Daniel Krikorian. We are so happy to have you here. On this podcast, we're going to be talking to a wonderful business owner who has multiple restaurants and catering for weddings. We're going to get right into it, and I know all of you out there, catering is a huge topic for your wedding, so we really hope that this gives you a great insight into the industry. But before we do that, I do want to let you know that this show is brought to you by the New England Wedding Expo. Go online right now to newenglandweddingexpo.com. Get your tickets. For all of you out there looking to find your vendor, tickets are free up to 150 individuals, and they are running out very, very quickly. And for all you vendors out there, just know there are only a few spots left. That being said, jump on the New England Wedding Expo, and we're going to get right into the show with Jen Ziskin. If I said that properly, I'm going to try as many times today, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher it once or twice. So you're the owner of 3 restaurants, and these are Lamora. We have Heritage of Sherborne, and then the Punch Bowl. But I really want to know how you got into the food industry, because it is such a fickle industry to be in, is it not?
It really is. Thank you, Daniel. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. So it is. It's funny. I actually entered the business when I was 15, as a means to make money. Mm-hmm. So always worked in restaurants while I was in high school, when I was in college. And then it was really funny. When I graduated college, I was looking for a job. But in the meantime, I wanted to wait tables. Figured that's what I knew how to do.
Yep.
So I went out and about. I was in Concord, and I went into a restaurant, and they were not looking for a server. They were looking for a manager. And that's literally how I started, right out of college, managing restaurants.
Now, it's funny because in college, I bartended to make money and pay off my degree, right?
Oh, yes,
and
it's the best job to do while you're in college.
Certainly is. Those 30-year-old women are a little nasty. All right. They have their moments. Right. And I was at a country club, and they thought that that's a little bit of meat behind the counter, and we're going to have some fun with him. And I was like, oh damn, this is an education.
Oh, yes. I think everybody should work in restaurants for sure.
Yeah. The general public is an interesting one to deal with. And it's probably why I can deal with weddings too. But I remember one day, my mother says to me, "How's work?" And I said, "I don't think you want to know." And she goes, "What?" And I said, "It's about a button away from being a stripper." And I never thought that in my life.
Oh, boy.
And she's like, "Where do you work?" And I was like,
exactly.
"It's a country club. It's not even a bar." And she's like, "Well, I don't know if this is good for you." I'm like, "Okay."
That's great.
So you went the management route. How did you end up owning these venues? Because that's a big switch, and I'm sure, the management side of things gets messy, that's for sure. And so was it a big step for you? How did you decide that I want to stay in this for the rest of my life, really, if you're going to own them?
Well, very funny you should ask. I actually was deciding between being an event planner and being a teacher at one point.
Oh, okay.
So I decided that I didn't want to work nights and weekends. So I was going to be a teacher, and I wanted my summers off. So I actually got my master's while still working in restaurants, mostly on the server and bartender side at that point. And then, so I taught for 7 years and taught middle school, very similar to running restaurants, actually.
You brave soul.
Very brave. But the funny thing was, I went to Italy with my husband, who always wanted to own a restaurant. So he, since he was 15, worked in restaurants. And so we traveled to Italy so he could learn firsthand how to cook. And I actually was a nanny for a winery. And then when we came back and he decided to open up Lamora, I was on maternity leave from teaching. He's like, "I could use some help in the restaurants." And that's how I got back in, and I never looked back to teaching.
Really? What a fascinating story. Now, Italy's the place to go if you're going to learn how to cook, right?
Oh, yes.
That's ideal.
And learn about wine. Exactly.
What part of Italy?
We were in Lamora, which is in Piedmont, northern Italy.
Okay, wonderful. And so that's where you get the name from. That's perfect. That's too funny. Now, did the event, I'm assuming it did, the event planning desire early on, did it swing back around and hit you? And going back into the wedding industry where you're just like, I need to be a part of this.
You know what? It really did. So when we opened Lamora, after a little bit, after being open, when my 5-week-old baby was a little older, I started doing all the events for Lamora. And we actually did a lot of catering, even though we were just, a restaurant.
Sure.
We did a lot of full service catering, weddings, bar mitzvahs, all kinds of parties. And I just got the bug. So when we bought Heritage almost 8 years ago now, that's a huge venue. And
Sure.
it just worked out perfectly that I would take over the events there as well.
Interesting. Okay. And so, I mean, I guess it's a pretty smooth transition to it's another revenue source for your actual business. Now, my big thing is since COVID, we've seen dramatic inflation. We've seen all of these different things occur. Has that shifted any of your business practices for these three businesses?
We've just had to get really smarter with how we've worked the packages. I think people really need to see the costs up front. So we've tried to put some of the costs that we used to line item into room fees or into wedding packages. That way it can really give them the idea of what they're going to spend ahead of time instead of later saying, oh, you need an extra bartender. Here's
Sure.
another $125. You need another manager, $200.
And is it just you and your husband running these three?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
I mean, we have amazing teams
Staff,
with
yes,
us.
of course.
But yes, it is just the two of us.
And did he look at you a little crazy when you're like, let's do weddings too? He's like, is this not enough?
I know, seriously. He had actually done some weddings before when he worked at another restaurant, Tuscan Grill.
Yep.
So he just always felt equipped for it. And like you said, it really is this whole nother revenue stream when you can do off-site catering.
Yes, absolutely. And it really keeps you rolling. The only thing that, well, when I looked at the catering business, which I got to be honest with you, I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. So I applaud you for it. That being said, when I looked at it, you take a lot of the predictions out. When you run a restaurant, you have to do a lot of predictions to how much food to order. When, if some food is going to go bad, you're always going to have some waste. With catering, it's pretty clean, is it not?
It is.
Yeah.
No, and I'm really impressed, especially the food side and the food cost side with what my husband does with that.
Yeah.
I mean, he can really predict exactly what we'll need. And then the staff gets a little extra at the end of the night.
Sure. I guess my big question too is how is it working with your husband?
It's interesting.
I'm sure.
For a while with Lamora, because he opened it, we would say he's the boss at work and I'm the boss at home. And that worked for many years. But
Yep.
when we opened Heritage, we really did it together. So it's hard. I think we really try to divide and conquer, and that helps a lot. We both have very different strengths. And it's nice to have someone who's always on your team. So
Sure.
I think there's so many benefits to it as well.
Again, in an industry, and this is from my lack of knowledge, but my limited experience, I should say, it's a very competitive industry in terms of, food and everything that goes into it. It can be very difficult, especially, the general public, as we discussed, is a difficult one to work with. But, it's funny because they're difficult enough outside of weddings, and now you're going to throw yourself into it. So you clearly like a challenge, do you not?
I like a challenge, and I do. I think my favorite part of the job is dealing with the people. So having that one-on-one experience, sitting down, talking about menus, doing a wedding tasting, those are my favorite days.
And I think that is wonderful, right? And that's, as much as I joke about the bartender time, I had some great customers that made my entire night. Actually, most people did. It's just the funny experiences that will stick out in your mind for the rest of your life. You're like, oh yes, she was a bit much.
Right, exactly. No, but those one-on-one connections that you can have, they kind of become your friends too.
Yeah.
So it's great.
I think that's the case in weddings too. In any service, you really have these incredible connections with people. And again, if you understand how to do that and want to do that, if you're that type of person, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful for you. And so I think, we're going to end up taking a quick break here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the importance of food at your wedding, because that's a big part. Those conversations are huge, right?
Absolutely.
And it's so important to have that open communication and understand, how to take care of both the couple and their entire audience that's with them, all of their friends and family. And that's, I say audience because I'm thinking photo and video. My mind's just stuck there.
Right.
But
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just as important to feed mom and dad as it is the bride and groom, right?
That's for sure. Absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick break here, everyone, and we're going to be back in just a few. I do want to let you know that we are brought to you by the New England Wedding Expo. Right now, we're talking to Jen Ziskin. So sorry. But we're going to be back in just a few seconds here. In the meantime, please go to newenglandweddingexpo.com. Get your free tickets today. We only have 150 free tickets, and then they are on sale for $5, and you can buy them at any time. Spots are running out fast, and there are 3 individual waves. Thank you so much. Sophie's over there being like, Jesus. So there are 3 individual waves. They start at 11 a.m. and we would love to see you on April 16th. Go to newenglandweddingexpo.com to get your tickets today, and we'll be back in just a second. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Wonderful World of Weddings. My name is Daniel Krikorian. We are so happy to have you here, and today we're having a wonderful discussion about food, catering, businesses, you name it. I have Jen. I can't do this right now. I don't know why. What is
Jen
Ziskin?
Ziskin.
I said it
Easy
before.
name.
It was great. So we're going to go right back into that conversation. Before we do that, though, please go to newenglandweddingexpo.com. They are our major sponsor for this channel, and we absolutely love having them on April 16th. Be Remembered is going to be there, so get your tickets. There are 3 waves starting at 11 a.m. You can go ahead and sign up at newenglandweddingexpo.com, and for all you vendors, there are very few spots left, so please book your booth today. We would love to see you there and have you a part of the action. But Jen, let's get right back into it. Saying Jen is so much easier because apparently I see the name up on the board. I talked to you about it before and I'm just tongue-tied.
You can just call me Jen.
Jen works, right? All right. So we have 3 restaurants. And I think for anyone listening in the wedding world and in the catering world, the big question is how to decide what food to have. And before the break, we were talking about we can't just appease the bride and groom. We need to have a swath of options for mom and dad, mostly, right? I mean, those two outside of the bride and groom, mom and dad are our primary customers here.
It's very nice that you say bride and groom because I just say bride.
You
really.
just say bride.
So.
You know, it's funny because the other day I had a wonderful woman on. She does boudoir photography. And she, the whole episode was about brides.
Right.
And I said, do you ever do anything for men? And she goes, oh, well, they just kind of stand there. They're just kind of props. And I was like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That's how we are in this
Right.
industry. We're just props.
Sorry.
That's okay. I understand my place. Don't get me wrong. So food is an absolutely huge part of the day, right? It's what people remember, I think, outside of the music. Of course, they'll look at a photo, but they remember how good the food was and they remember how great the DJ was.
Yes.
That's just when I talk to people in their weddings, mom and dad specifically, I had this great DJ. The food was incredible, right? So how do we figure out what we want for that day? I don't even know where to begin. I've never had that conversation. Where do you begin with most couples?
Well, it's interesting because I think there is something special about having a restaurant cater your event.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do offsite catering with the restaurants, it's not just that, something we do all the time because all the time we're running restaurants. But there's that extra special touch that goes into the catering when you get it from a restaurant. And then when you get it from your favorite restaurant that you're at, if it's your parents or yourself, that you're there once a week or once a month or special occasions, it makes it that, even more special. Mm-hmm. So I think starting there, if you are thinking about who to have cater your wedding, if it's off-site, think about that extra special attachment and the special touch that you'll get from a restaurant.
And you have the benefit of having 3.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Do you serve different menus at each of them? I presume you do.
We do. And they're all 3 separate entities, 3 separate businesses, but also a nice thing. Like if you want L'Amore Bolognese at your wedding that's catered by Heritage, we can make that happen. So it's a nice extra touch.
That's awesome. Absolutely. And again, so let's go back to the fact of how do you decide or how what food do you even have, right? How do you decide on the bolognese with this? I mean, that's a difficult process, is it not?
It is. And that's why we like to do wedding tastings, which is great. And we have packages set up so people, the bride and groom can look over the packages. You can have a package that's just a 3-course meal. You can have a package that has 4 or 5 past appetizers followed by a 3-course meal.
Right.
So trying to streamline it there. And then when we do our wedding tasting, they choose 6 past hors d'oeuvres to taste, 3 proteins, 3 sides, 3 salads. It's so much fun
Right.
because they get to try so much food. I
Yeah.
always say, come very hungry, bring your parents
Yeah.
because it really is a great day.
Well, and you have the benefit of having a place for them to come too, right? It's not the venue. You can say, hey, just come over here I'll meet you at Lamora, right? And we'll have a tasting.
Right, exactly. No, it works out really well. And they're fun. We do them in the middle of the day, so we can really have time and sit down and detail the wedding as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So as we were talking, I'm assuming it's a big decision for the bride.
Yes, yeah.
Do you just bring the bride and groom in for this? Do you bring other people? I know it depends on the location, but.
So we allow them to bring like their parents. They can bring
Sure.
in their parents. And then if they want to add anyone as well, we just do supplements for the tasting.
Gotcha.
But sometimes they just like to do it alone, and sometimes they like to have both sets of parents.
Right. And what's popular these days? Do you see trends that occur, or is it more based on your restaurant?
It's definitely based on the restaurant, but what's really interesting, we have this barbecue package, and a lot of the brides and grooms have chosen that lately, the barbecue package.
Yeah.
And then another one a few years ago that was really popular was the clam bake package for weddings. Like,
Yeah.
I've had brides literally want to get down and dirty with lobsters. So those are
You
really
warn
fun
them?
things.
Do you
We
say,
do. We're
really?
Like, she's like, nope, you don't even need to make it, lazy man. I'm all in.
No kidding.
Yep.
And the barbecue one, and I wonder if that has anything to do with the farm style weddings that I see occurring, because there was, 2021, every single wedding had one of those bark cakes. And I just sat there and I was
Right.
like, why? Who is making
on?
these?
Right.
And it was a bunch. I actually thought it was one company because they all looked identical, only to find out. I also wonder if Pinterest just had anything to do with it. If it was just like, it's farm season here in Massachusetts, you're like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah. And Heritage, you feel like you're on a farm. You're right next door to a farm. So I think that's why the barbecue menu becomes popular.
Sure. And so do you guys travel throughout New England?
Yes, we do. No, we'll go anywhere.
You'll go anywhere.
Yep.
Okay.
Done beach weddings, which are really fun, and Nantasket Beach right on the water. That was really beautiful.
And do you find that the menu change based off of that?
Yes,
Of
definitely.
course,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
You want a little more seafood influence if you're doing that, for sure.
And how many packages do you offer? And also, here's another fun argument that James and I have, which James is right off camera. And do you find the a la carte packages tend to work better, or the a la carte options tend to work better, or more of the package ordeal? And for you guys, I assume packages are better.
Yeah, definitely packages. And I think it just gives more guidance to them. And then I see more like supplemental things added to the
Sure.
package. But most people do stick with the packages.
Yeah. And before we were talking about the fact that, most couples only do this once. They get thrown into the world for 12 to 18 months on average, and then they're out. And so packages just seem to be such a better guiding principle in terms of offers, right?
Definitely.
And so I really think that's huge. But are there other factors to planning your catering in terms of like our budget, or maybe, how do allergies factor in? I'm thinking of, and venues factor in. How do you manage things like that?
I think, by having the packages, it gives the guidance, but then we always work with dietary restrictions. And I've had people say, we have a guest who's gluten-free. Do we need to do a whole gluten-free menu? No, you don't. So we're willing to do like separate plated meals for those guests. It really needs to be what, the bride and groom want and what their vision is for the day. And then we can work with any dietary restrictions based on that.
I guess for budget, if you have the packages, now do you offer those in plain sight, or is that more of a once you inquire and tell us what you need, we start talking?
We send the information right away, but it's not on the website, the packages, because we do like to have that personal touch.
Of course.
So I always like to have that, even meeting someone first, to have that time. But usually we do send the packages right off because it's, it's not in everybody's budget. And so I think that is important to be upfront with that.
To just let them know, hey, this is what you're going to be dealing with here.
Exactly.
But again, I think the packages are nice because you can eliminate that right away. You can say yes or no. This is for us. This is not for us. This is the price, right?
Yeah.
And when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about, the whole contract side of things, because this was a big topic that came up in 2020. I feel like 2020 exposed a lot of the industry's details that are necessary. And a lot of people didn't understand that. A lot of couples didn't understand why these things were built in. And so they thought they were just against them. And now all of a sudden we're going back to normal and they say, oh, that's why. And it's like, yes, that is why. Yes, there was a rhyme to the reason, especially for catering where I think there's so many variables. You know, a photography package and the equipment we use is going to stay the same price.
Right.
It's a fixed cost for the most part. You know, you don't have fixed costs. Your costs may vary every day.
No, and it's true. And we really, I mean, Lamora's been open. It'll be 20 years this December. We just raised our package prices like by $5 in all the years. I mean, so we really try not to raise prices too much. But this last year has shown us that we do have to a little bit.
And I think one of the things that just happened, it was all of a sudden. It really was. There was no gradual increase. It was, hey, this is going to be in your face. As a business, you need to either deal with it or you're going out of business.
Right,
it was that quick, you know? So we're going to talk a little bit about that and a little bit about the food tasting when we come right back here on The Wonderful World of Weddings. We are talking to Jen Ziskin. We got this. we're talking to Jen over here, and we're going to have a little bit more information about food tastings and everything you need to know and look for right when we come back here on The Wonderful World of Weddings. Don't forget, go to NewEnglandWeddingExpo.com to get your tickets as a spectator, finding your wonderful vendor, or as a vendor, booking your booth. We can't wait to see you back here in just a few. Thanks.
Every step, writing stories that seek to be read, taking hold of the moment as we discover every color filled with wonder. Now we finally see we got everything we need. Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go, with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day, it's ours to take, and we will let it in. This is where the adventure begins.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Wonderful World of Weddings. My name is Daniel Krikorian. We are so happy to have you here, and today we are talking all about food, which is my favorite. I love food. I love food, and I eat constantly, and that's fine. I'm 6'2". I need food. That being said, your wedding day and the food on it is very important, and the catering of it is very important. So we're going to talk to a wonderful guest. We've been talking to her for the past 2 segments. Her name is Jen Ziskin, which I think I said it right this time.
Yay.
First attempt, yes. Before we do that, though, please go to NewEnglandWeddingExpo.com. They are our sponsor. It is on April 16th. It is right in Marlborough, Massachusetts. We did it last year with Be Remembered. We're going to be there again. It is booking out, and it is twice the size as it was last year. And there are 3 different waves for you to go sign up for as a wonderful couple looking for your vendors. So jump there, join us right on April 16th in Marlborough, Massachusetts. Go to NewEnglandWeddingExpo.com. That being said, we're going to get right back into it here. And we were talking a little bit about food tasting. We were talking about inflation and how it's played a huge part. So in this segment, we're actually going to jump into 2 things. I want to talk about food tasting and how and what you guys cover during the day. I also want to talk a little bit about that contract and how it breaks down, because when I talk to planners and they say to expect to pay a large portion of your budget to food, you know, what does that cover and what things people should be aware of? Now, before the break, we talked about inflation. I don't think people ever need to account for the dramatic inflation that we just had, right?
Right, exactly.
And I know this has stopped. I've seen some weddings get a little bit smaller because they said, whoa, the price is much different than it was a year ago. We have to compress this down a bit. Did you find that becoming the case this year?
We're definitely doing a lot of smaller weddings. I would say this past year, we did a lot of smaller weddings. First, there were the limits for COVID.
Yep.
And then people were just nervous about getting large crowds together.
Sure.
We have an amazing outside space at Heritage. So there's a 30 by 70 tent there all summer long. So that really worked well for guests, 100 and less. This summer, I'm really excited because we're doing over 200 person weddings and we're just adding on to the tent. So that'll be really fun. So I don't know. I've seen it go both ways. I think people know what they want and they don't necessarily want to limit their special day. It's
Right.
hopefully they're once in a lifetime event. So I think I've seen it go both ways. And we've really tried not to change our pricing too much, to really try to stay in the budgets. There's certainly times that we are over budget for people, but we try to work as much as we can with the bride and groom and to have all the costs up front. So there are no real hidden costs for them.
And one of the things with cost, when you break it down to a couple, is it per plate? And then how does that whole structure work?
So we do wedding packages and it's all inclusive. So you pay a room fee and then you pay for your wedding package. That's going to include your linens, your chairs, all the food, everything is included. The only additional then we'll do beverage packages, or you could do on consumption.
Sure.
But there are no line items. Like you don't have to pay additional to have a day of wedding coordinator. They'll help organize your vendors of the day.
Yep.
So we try to make it as easy as possible.
In that package, does it describe how many individuals are in there? Like, does it include, serving 100 people versus 150?
It's all based on their number. You could have 10 or you could have 150 people. Same package. Gotcha. It's a per person package.
It is a per person package. Per person. Okay. And so that's the big part of it.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because for us, when you go into quantity, we can drop price because there's a little, we have a little bit more wiggle room. For you guys, I'm assuming that as you go more quantity, you actually need more people to help serve, to help cook, right? All of these different aspects.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we can work with it a little bit. Like when we do get over the 200 number, we'll work more with like food and beverage minimums, that kind of thing. But again, it really is like, more chairs are needed, more staff is needed. So we have to account for that. And staffing's really expensive now. Yes. I mean, that's probably our biggest hurdle, even more than food pricing going up.
And making sure you have someone as well. That's another big portion. Yeah, making sure you have the staff to manage it.
Right. And to make sure they're well trained. I mean, we've been really lucky with our event staff. They love working the events, and we really try to create this kind of personal connection as well. So we've been very fortunate with our event staff.
And when you go outside of your venues or outside of your restaurants, are you cooking on site? Are you bringing it? Like, how does that whole thing work? Do you have to work with the venue prior?
So what we do is we kind of do 3/4 of the cooking on our own at the restaurants, and then we bring it and finish it on site.
Okay.
We've worked having outside kitchens. So, you rent an outside oven and stove, you rent a grill, a fryolator. We've set up full kitchens outside for outside venues, and those are really fun.
And you guys take care of all of that, right? That's built into the cost.
Take care of all the rentals. Exactly. I mean, it's a little separate. Everything, when you do catering, they pay separately for the servers, for the managers, for the food. But we put it all together in an estimate ahead of time for them.
And I think the big question, again, and this is from my ignorance here, trying to help any couple that's really curious before they make that call. The linens, the plates, things of that nature, is that coming from the venue side? And I'm assuming at Heritage and Lamora, yes, it is. But from the outside venue that you're a caterer at, are they bringing in those plates, or are you in the linens?
We take care of all the rentals, but I use rental companies for all of all of things.
You do, yeah.
Off-site, on-site, it's all of us.
Okay, so you have the tables, the
we
chairs,
have everything. Yeah, we even have like multiple tables, especially at Heritage. Yeah, really equipped for that.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know about the outdoor kitchens you can rent. That's really cool.
It's great. We can cater anywhere, really.
Yeah. So you guys don't have like a truck, you just have them rented.
No, we don't.
And then you go, wow, that's really cool.
I mean, we do have a truck, but not necessarily a truck we can
Right. Little different.
Although we have done it.
Have you really?
Before we opened Lamora, we had one night we had to cook outside the restaurant. Another long story.
Really?
Another segment.
Oh, jeez. That's awesome. Oh, my goodness. So for all couples who are out there who don't understand how that, that dining room gets set, you guys at plates, linens, etc., obviously a florist is coming in for the flowers, you're taking care of utensils, all of that. And I think we touched upon the fact that you're bringing in servers as well, which is a huge portion of the day. I don't think, now, do you do buffets at all? Oh, you do? Yeah, you offer that as well.
Buffet, family style, and plated.
Oh, really? Now, do you find any trends towards buffets? Because I saw them pretty big last year.
I definitely am. I see them coming on more now because
Really?
I think people just want to have fun. They want to get up. They want to mingle. They want a party atmosphere, and they do feel like having a buffet. They're out of their seat more than sitting down.
And it's a little bit quicker, I do find as well. You
Exactly.
know, the plated meals, you're really dedicated to that amount of time. There's a lot of logistics there as well for you guys, where the buffet tends to be very just, hey, when we're ready, move in and move out.
Have all your courses. It's great.
Yeah. Do you prefer that as a catering company?
Only if it's like a event that really wants the focus to be more on the dancing and the DJ, then I do recommend it. I mean, I like things to be all about the food.
Right.
So I have to say I like those 4 or 5 course meals.
Yeah.
But I also let couples know if you're going to do like a pasta course, if you're at Lamora and you do a 4-course meal, you're going to be in your seats for 2 hours. And,
Right. That's a big part.
might not want to do that. But a lot of the people who do use Lamora, as a venue want it to be all about the meal.
They do.
Which I think is fun too.
Interesting. Okay. And so you're seeing that venue to venue.
Oh, it's so different. Each venue is so different.
Now, Punch Bowl.
Brand new place. Yeah.
Brand new, really. And is that a venue as well?
It is. So we have smaller private dining spaces. We have one that seats 50 guests, but then it has this beautiful terrace.
Oh.
So you can, as long as the weather cooperates, be out on the terrace overlooking the muddy river of Brookline. And then we have an outside patio that we can put tents up on. So smaller,
wow.
It's a smaller venue. So the tent out there would be like a 20 by 40 tent.
And what's the food variety there versus the 2 others?
It's American with a little bit more of a seafood focus. And then it's named after an old tavern. So we have a great burger, great patty melt as well.
Gotcha. And so, again, I think this is amazing. Your husband, I'm assuming, has multiple chefs for these locations, but does he jump in and can really do any style at this point?
So he's the executive chef of all
Sure.
3 restaurants. And when somebody goes away or when someone leaves, he's on the line. But he does it. He's now coming to the front of the house a little bit more too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm trying to pull him over.
Oh, you're trying to pull him. I thought he was trying to jump over. And you're like, hey.
Now, so I am buried in event planning,
Right.
which is a lot of fun, but it does take me away from the restaurants too.
Absolutely. Well, when we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about those stories and try to wrap it up with any suggestions for couples that you may have and from the side of catering to really ensue an incredible experience. We're going to be back here in just a few seconds. My name is Daniel Krikorian. You are listening and watching The Wonderful World of Weddings. I am here with Jen Ziskin, and we are having a wonderful discussion about everything catering. So jump back with us in just a few seconds here, and let's wrap it up by giving you everything you need to know about catering and making your day a huge success. And that's what we want over here at Wonderful World of Weddings. Another way to make your day a huge success is go to newenglandweddingexpo.com today to get your tickets. We have 3 waves available starting at 11 a.m. Be Remembered will be there, and we'll be there with a bunch of other vendors from across New England to make sure you have a wonderful experience. First 150 tickets are free, so sign up now, and we'll see you back here in just a few seconds. Thanks, guys. Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Wonderful World of Weddings. I've been having a lovely conversation about all things food, but right now it's time to get into the major questions for each couple because I know you guys have questions and so do I out there. So we're going to talk to Jen Ziskin about her 3 restaurants, Lamora, Heritage, and Punch Bowl, but more importantly talk about when, the where, the why, the how, the whole 9 yards, every major question. To start, when do we start our booking process for catering?
Before you get engaged. No, I'm just kidding.
That's every wedding service provider's answer. It's like, hey, why don't you give me a call, propose, then we'll get this started.
Exactly. No, I think, after you get engaged, it should be one of the first things that you do. Especially if you're doing, finding your venue. And if it's at one of our restaurants, you want to secure that first.
Yep.
We book out about a year or 2 in advance. We do a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs as well at all the restaurants. So those book out like 3 years in advance. So I would say that's really the only thing. If you have a date in mind, I would do it as early as possible. You don't have to start detailing really until a year out, or even less. I think 3-4 months is fine as well. But the sooner the better, just so you have, you really get everything that you want.
What's the average time frame? Is it around 12 to 18 months or is it even earlier?
Well, during COVID, it was like 3 weeks. I swear I had multiple events and weddings. Like, we're going to get married in 3 weeks.
Yep.
And we made it happen.
Because they all said, screw it.
Right.
They said,
We're
we're
just
done.
doing it.
Yeah. We want to be,
Exactly.
we can't get 200. We want 50. Let's go do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
Now we're getting at least a year in advance. But I'm getting bookings now, even for this summer, for the fall.
Really? Yeah.
So we can do it in less than that amount of time. We still have availability on site. And then when it's catering, sky's the limit. We could do that a month out. So we can make it happen.
And then for the food tastings, I'm assuming, and again, this is from my lack of knowledge, that I'm doing those either before I book or right after. Is that correct?
We do them after you book.
After
so
you
once
book.
you've decided, because we have restaurants,
Sure.
you can come in and taste the food anytime.
And you have so many choices.
Exactly.
Right? That's
and so you can try the cuisine at each of the restaurants, make sure that it's a fit for you. So once you book, we set up the tasting. If it is a year out, I love to do it in the season of your wedding because we're very seasonal. So we use all the local farms.
Okay.
That way you get to try the actual vegetables that'll be available during your wedding. If we don't do that, that's okay as well. You can imagine what the summer vegetables will be like, and we can always bring them in and try those too. But that's the ideal.
What about for catering? Is it about the same there, or is it different time frame?
Similar. I would say similar. I mean, it takes a little bit more for logistics and rentals to do catering. But we're pretty quick and we can turn things around pretty quickly. I just think, securing your venue, securing your caterer, they should be some of the first things that you do when you get engaged.
I completely agree. One of the next things, though, is the connection with the venue. Now, I know you said that you can rent and you'll take care of all of that in the back end. But my question is, does that need to be a factor once they book that venue, letting you know and really getting you in touch with that venue, or can that come down the line?
No, we definitely like to get in touch with the venue. I mean, we have catered at places, and not necessarily for a wedding, but the actual venue was 3 floors up and we had an outside kitchen. So the food does come into play on what the logistics are. So I always like to do a site visit, and I like to do it with the bride and groom or just with the on-site coordinator.
All right. So here's an interesting one that just came to mind then. Are you going ahead and asking them to see the venue before the food tasting? So in case there's any limitations?
I would say we would do that before a food tasting. Yes. Especially if there are limitations, but usually it's outlined in the contract, or the couple has gone to the venue and they can give you some of those ideas as well.
And I guess that actually brings up a great point. Are there anything specific in the contract that you always talk to people about, and, or that people should look at, even if they're not maybe talking to you as a caterer or you as a venue? What things should they be looking for in those contracts?
I would just say,
without giving away your dirty secrets.
Right. I mean, cancellation policies are important, especially, weather cancellation policies, because especially when you're someone like a small family restaurant like we are, you have to have those kind of guidelines in your contract to cover yourself as well. And we're pretty flexible. I mean, as long as somebody gives us enough notice or we can rebook a space, we're fine to do refunds if we need to. We always like working with people, but definitely check those things. And then I would just say, looking through, like, we have a sound limitation at Heritage, so that's all in our contract. Luckily, it's not a crazy sound limitation where you can still have an outside DJ, but those are important factors to consider. And even I know we have to end sound outside at 10:30. So to know that if you want your wedding to go into the wee hours of the night, this might not be a venue for you.
Yeah, there are sound ordinances from every town, and you don't even dictate them.
No, we do not.
Yes. I mean, I was actually talking to a venue just the other day, and they told me they can't have any music outside because the sound ordinance for that town is like within 100 feet. Someone can't hear it, and they're in a neighborhood.
No, Sherbourne was really nice to me, and we had to I went and we changed the town policy at town meeting to be able to have outside music.
Really?
Yep. And they were incredible, super supportive as well.
Price changes. Is that something that's a part of that contract as well?
We say within a year. Like, so if you book further than a year,
Mm-hmm.
then there might be price changes in our packages. But we
Okay.
don't do a ton of changing the actual package.
Sure.
It might be just certain things like, steak just went up a little bit.
Yep.
Short ribs, that'll go up a little. It'll be more supplemental costs. So you can get around those.
Is that pretty common in catering contracts?
I would say it's very common. I think people sometimes go up even like in less than a year as well.
Right. Okay, so there is a time frame though that you put in that contract.
We do.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. I didn't even think of that. And I guess, is there any additional tips or things that people should be asking prior? Now, I love the fact that you have a restaurant because people can say, I love Lamora. I've had their food. I want to either be there as a venue or use them as catering. And so having that option gives you a step ahead. But even for customers or couples who don't have that, what should they be thinking about going into finding that caterer for their big day?
I mean, if food is important to you, and I'm not saying it's important to everybody, but if it is important to you, you should use someone you trust and someone you know.
Sure.
Sure, if you really trust your first cousin and they love this restaurant or this caterer, that's a reliable source.
Right.
But it is nice when you do use restaurants, because a lot of restaurants do cater. And if you have that special place that you go to find out if they do cater, because we love catering and we love doing that.
Yeah. And it's funny because even this year for photography, I went to a few restaurants where they booked out the whole restaurant. And this couple, actually it was an adorable couple that I did all of their friends' weddings to, which was too funny. And I said to them, I was like, the bar was a little tight. The space really wasn't set up for events. I said, why'd you guys do it here? Like I knew they had plenty of money. I was like, why? And they just looked at me and they're just like, oh, see those two bar seats over there, every day we'd come in and this is actually where we had our first date. And I was like, oh, okay. And the food was phenomenal. So it all worked out. It wasn't a wedding venue, but,
Exactly.
but yeah, I don't think they catered either. So they're just like, we didn't want anything too crazy. This was perfect. So that's definitely a huge piece of it. I think it's phenomenal to have that type of connection.
Absolutely.
But before we jump off, so I want to let people know two things. One, where they can find you. So Lamora, number one. We have the Heritage, and then we have Punch Bowl. Heritage is Sherborne?
Yep, Heritage of Sherborne.
Okay. And then where is the
So
other two?
Lamora and Punch Bowl are both in Brookline, right in Brookline Village, right on Route 9. They're about a block away from each other.
That's convenient.
It is very convenient. It helps. So yeah, they can find us from our websites, and I'm the event planner. So
Gotcha.
It's very funny. They're like, "Are you the owner?" Because so it is. It's been a lot of fun doing the events, and I kind of bounce in and bounce out over the years. But now I've decided this is the place to stay.
Very nice. That's where you want to be.
That's where I want to be.
And you're running
Exactly.
events for all three of them.
All three restaurants.
So no matter who they call, let's say event.
Not enough hours in the day, but
I was going to say, do you sleep at all?
I do not sleep.
Do
at
not
all.
sleep. Okay. That's the industry though, right?
Exactly.
They're going to call you at 10:30. Hey, I have this problem. You're like,
Yeah, exactly. You
10:30 at
do have
night.
to be available 24/7. I mean, within reason.
yes. But I feel like as a restaurant, you were a little bit more attuned to this, right? You were
Exactly.
ready to go. You were
Right.
like, I stay up till 12 and make money.
I
So
got
I'm
this.
good.
Yep.
Awesome. I feel like your kids are like, Mom, like, is this life? And you're like,
Right.
no, most people are 9 to 5, but that's okay.
Exactly. They were very used to it over the years.
Absolutely. All right. So everyone who wants to go find any of these restaurants, please go online, go check them out. The food, I'm sure, is absolutely incredible. But you also have another skill, and that's wine tasting. And so we're going to be back on here the next week. So whenever you're watching us, tune in the week after because Jen's going to be back with us, and we're going to taste some wine. Now,
Can't wait.
I don't drink.
Uh-oh.
Not that much. Not that
Right,
much. That
okay.
being said, I actually had to do a mini wine course when I worked for that country club and got harassed. They did a wonderful wine course.
Oh,
So
all right.
I'm going to see if I remember anything.
Okay, I'm going to test you.
It's probably going to be a miserable fail, but it'll be great. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you all the couples out there. I hope I did a good job answering your questions or asking your questions. If I didn't, go to berememberedweddings.com/podcast. Tell us your story, send in your questions so I can ask wonderful people like Jen how to make your day better. And if there's nothing else, then I guess we're going to see you back here in a week.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for everyone joining us today. Make sure to go on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you get your podcasts, even on YouTube. We're there and we'd love to have you listen in. My name is Daniel and this has been The Wonderful World of Weddings. Thank you so much for being a part of it.